Alright, in this video we'll take a look at translating or moving our cube in Blender. There's a few different ways to translate objects in Blender, as well as a couple of helpful hotkeys that may not be obvious. First, let's take a look at the obvious method for translating objects. We already have a translate widget on our cube by default when it's selected. If you've used other 3D software, this will be a very familiar widget. If not, let's go over it. We can left-click and hold on any of the arrows to move our object along our chosen axis. When we release, our object will stop. Now, we can also right-click and hold on an arrow, and as we move, our cube will follow our mouse perpendicular to our current view. We can then left-click to end that translation. Now, as you can see, doing this in a perspective user view could easily create an unintended result, so use it sparingly. It should be noted that this right-click is the same as grabbing the cube, or using the hotkey G. Again, left-clicking to end the move. Now that we've seen the hotkey G, let's make that work a little more accurately for us. If we select an object and use G to grab it, we can follow that up with any of the axis keys to lock our object into that axis, just like grabbing a widget handle. In this case, let's hit G, then Z, and you can see we move freely along the Z axis until we left-click to end the operation. Now, our object will stay in grab mode until we left-click and end that. What does that mean? Well, it means if we hit G and then Z like we did before and move our object, we can then simply hit the next axis key we want to move in and proceed. In this case, let's hit X and push our object back, then left-click to release. Now, sometimes we need a little more control over our movements. Now come some of those lesser-known hotkeys. If we follow the method we've been using, we can get more accuracy by using either of the following two additional hotkeys. If we use G and Z again, for example, we can also hold down Control, and Blender will snap our object one Blender unit at a time. If we hold down Shift rather than Control, our item no longer snaps, but it moves at a much more slow rate than our mouse movement and allows for finer control if needed. For additional control, your arrow keys can be substituted for mouse control as well. Lastly, we can also hit the Translate button located on our tool shelf as opposed to hitting the G key. Now, my preference is that you guys use hotkeys whenever possible, but I wanted to point out its location. Alright, now once we step outside of using our hotkeys, we can also enter in very specific translate amounts. If we hit the N key that we learned about, we can enter in numbers under our transform location heading to place objects at very specific points. In this case, let's move our cube to 2, 2.25, and 2.5 in world space. As you can see, we can enter in decimals as well. If we need to adjust things from there, clicking the arrows on the transform dials will allow us to move our object by tenths of a unit. We can also click and hold the arrows to simply move the object as far as we want. Alright, let's do a quick review. This has been a short video, but I just want to review quickly and get onto our quiz so that we can move on to other forms of translation. Now, we've learned how to move or translate our cube a variety of ways. The most useful methods are to use our hotkeys, G for grab, followed by the axis we wish to translate on. We can also simply grab our translate widget by left-clicking on an arrow and move in this fashion. If we need fine control, We can also use our Control key to snap our objects to the grid, and our Shift key to get slow, fine movement. Lastly, we can always enter an exact value in our transform location fields. Now, let's quiz that knowledge, and then I'll see you in the next video. Alright, for our quiz, which hotkey allows us to grab our selected object? If I grab an object and move it along the Z-axis, what key or keys should I press to then move it along the X-axis? What hotkey allows us to snap objects one Blender unit at a time? And which hotkey that we've learned before opens up the panel so that we can enter exact coordinates into the transform location fields? Should have got them all right this time, and I'll see you guys in the next video.